You've been told this bird has a built-in shock absorber in its skull, that its tongue wraps around its brain like a seatbelt, that spongy bone between the beak and the brain case cushions every impact, and that all of this inspired the design of modern safety helmets. None of it is true. In 2022, a team led by Sam van Wassenberg at the University of Antwerp filmed 3 species of woodpecker at high speed and measured exactly what happens at the moment of impact. The result overturned decades of assumptions. The skull doesn't absorb the shock, it transmits it completely. A woodpecker's head is not a helmet, it's a hammer, and from a mechanical standpoint, that's the only thing that makes sense, because any energy the skull absorbed would be energy wasted, energy that should have gone into the wood. A woodpecker that cushioned its own blows would be a worse woodpecker. The skull is rigid, stiff, and unforgiving because that's what makes it effective. So if the skull isn't protecting the brain, what is? The answer is not anatomy, it's physics, specifically the physics of scale. A woodpecker's brain weighs a few grams. A human brain weighs about 1,400 grams. That difference changes everything. Concussion happens when the brain experiences sudden deceleration. The skull stops, the brain keeps moving, and the resulting pressure damages tissue. But the pressure depends on the ratio between the brain's mass and its surface area. A smaller brain has more surface area relative to its volume. The impact force spreads across a proportionally larger area. The pressure per unit of tissue drops dramatically. A woodpecker strikes a tree at roughly 20 kilometers per hour. The deceleration at impact, 1,200 Gs. A human concusses at 60 to 100 Gs. The woodpecker exceeds that by a factor of 12, and it does this up to 22 times per second. But because the brain is so small and sits so tightly packed inside the skull with almost no cerebrospinal fluid, there's no room for it to move, no sloshing, no internal collision. The brain decelerates with the skull as a single rigid unit. The forces that would destroy a human brain dissipate across the woodpecker's tiny volume into nothing dangerous. The math works, barely, and this is where it stops being comfortable. In 2018, a team led by Peter Cummings at Boston University examined preserved woodpecker brains from the collections of the Field Museum and Harvard. They stained thin slices of brain tissue with silver ions to highlight a specific protein, tau. In humans, tau accumulation is the signature of chronic traumatic brain injury, the same condition found in football players and boxers after years of repeated head impacts. It disrupts communication between neurons. It causes cognitive and motor decline. It's the protein that defines CTE. The woodpecker brains had significantly more tau accumulation than the control group, red-winged blackbirds, a species that never hits its head against anything. Nobody knows what this means yet. It's possible that tau functions differently in woodpecker brains, that it stabilizes rather than destroys. It's possible that woodpeckers have adapted to tolerate levels of tau that would devastate a human. Or it's possible that every woodpecker you've ever watched pecking a tree is quietly accumulating damage that we simply haven't measured yet. The helmet designers who modeled their products on woodpecker skulls may have been borrowing from a system that doesn't work the way they thought. The skull isn't a shock absorber, the brain may not be fully protected, and the bird keeps pecking 1,200 Gs, 22 times a second every day of its life, because stopping would mean starving. It chose brain damage over hunger, and it's been making that trade for millions of years. These are the shots that didn't make the final cut, but they were too good to leave out. If you want more of this, birds doing things that shouldn't be survivable, subscribe. And one question, do you think the woodpecker knows? Or does it just not matter? Leave it in the comments.